The soup was perfect. Mirelle knew it was perfect because she had been making it since she was 12 years old, standing on a step stool beside her father, watching him taste it with his eyes closed like he was listening to music. But when she carried it out to the dining table that Tuesday evening, her hand caught the edge of the serving bowl and a small drop landed on the tablecloth. Just one drop. Mirelle Baptiste looked at it the way she looked at most things Mirelle did, with tired contempt. "Sorry," Mirelle said immediately. "Sorry, I'll clean it." She was already reaching for a napkin before anyone responded. Selene was sitting across the table, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up. "You should be more careful." "She's right," Calandra agreed, settling back into her chair. Every single time. No one asked what she meant by every single time. They didn't need to. It wasn't really about the drop. Mirelle blotted the cloth quietly, then returned to her seat at the far end of the table, the seat closest to the kitchen, the one that made it easiest for her to get up and refill things without disturbing anyone. She sat. She waited. Calandra tasted the soup first. Her expression didn't change, but she took a second spoonful, then a third. That was how Mirelle knew she liked it. "Selene, baby," Calandra said, "you mentioned you were thinking about adding more variety to our dinner menu. Maybe cooking classes or something. I think that's a wonderful idea." Selene set her phone down and smiled. "Yeah, I was thinking about it. I want to be more intentional about what we eat." Mirelle stared at her bowl. She had spent 2 hours on the soup. Nobody at that table mentioned her name. She ate slowly, chewing without tasting, moving the spoon out of habit. This was normal. She understood by now that her work existed in this house the way furniture existed, used without acknowledgement, noticed only when something went wrong. Later after dinner, a neighbor who had joined them for dessert leaned toward Calandra and said, "Your girls are wonderful. And the food, whoever cooked this should be running a restaurant." Calandra smiled graciously. "Selene has been taking a real interest in the kitchen lately." Selene accepted the compliment without a flinch, without even glancing toward Mirelle. Mirelle was standing 3 feet away. She turned and walked back to the kitchen. There were moments, small, involuntary, when she still heard her father's voice in rooms he had left years ago. "Come back here, Rel. Taste this. You tell me what's missing." He had never made her feel like cooking was a chore. He made her feel like it was a conversation, like every dish she made said something real about who she was. She remembered being 16, burning a batch of plantains, ready to throw the whole pan away. He had taken the pan from her gently. "Burnt doesn't mean ruined," he said. "It means you pushed it far enough to find out." She had laughed. She couldn't remember the last time she laughed in this kitchen. Alton Baptiste had been gone for 6 years. And without him, the house had rearranged itself around his absence, filling the space he left with a hierarchy nobody spoke out loud but everybody enforced. Calandra moved to the center. Selene moved beside her. Mirelle moved to the edges. She stood at the sink now, washing dishes in water that had gone lukewarm, and she did not think about any of this consciously. She just moved through it the way she moved through everything in this house, carefully, efficiently, and without drawing attention to herself. When the kitchen was clean, she stood at the counter. Pot of soup still had some left at the bottom, too little to offer anyone, too much to throw away. She took a bowl from the cabinet, poured the rest in, stood at the counter and ate it alone in the quiet kitchen, listening to the faint sounds of the television from the living room, where her mother and sister were laughing at something she hadn't been invited to watch. The soup was still perfect. Nobody would ever know she made it. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Whether you're in Lagos, London, Atlanta, Toronto, or somewhere we haven't named yet, we see you. Now let's get back to Mirelle. Chapter 2. Mirelle's alarm went off at 5:15 every morning. She didn't need it. Her body had learned to wake on its own at that hour, but she kept it set because the sound of it gave her something to anchor the day to. A small signal that said, "Start now." She showered quickly. got dressed without turning on the overhead light because Céline's room shared a wall and any sound before 7 was treated as a personal offense. By 5:40 she was in the kitchen. She made coffee first, the strong kind Calandra liked with cardamom, a habit left over from when Alton was alive and used to say the smell alone woke him up better than the caffeine. Then she started on breakfast. Eggs, toast, sliced fruit, fresh juice. Nothing elaborate. Just consistent, careful good. At 7:30, Calandra came downstairs in her silk robe, sat at the head of the table and opened her phone. She didn't say good morning. Mirelle put a plate in front of her. Calandra picked up a fork without looking up. At 8, Céline appeared, showered, dressed, smelling like expensive lotion. She sat down and immediately said, "Is there any of that guava juice left?" "Yes," Mirelle said. She was already moving toward the refrigerator. Céline accepted the glass, glanced at her phone and said to Calandra, "I was thinking we should do brunch on Sunday. Invite the Adaires." "Perfect idea," Calandra said. "Something light. Elegant." "I'll plan the menu," Céline said. Neither of them looked at Mirelle. Mirelle stood at the counter and finished her own breakfast standing up, eating quickly between tasks, the way she had learned to eat when there wasn't enough time to sit, or when sitting felt like it required a permission she hadn't been given. This was the morning. Every morning. A rhythm so old it had stopped feeling like a choice. The family had rules that were never spoken but always enforced. Céline's schedule was protected. If she had a late night, the house adjusted. Nobody vacuumed before noon. Nobody played music in the common areas. The refrigerator stayed stocked with the specific drinks she liked, and when something ran out, it was replaced before she noticed. Mirelle's schedule didn't exist. She cooked, cleaned, managed deliveries, handled anything that needed handling, and when it was done, she disappeared into her room or into the background, whichever was easier. Once, a distant cousin came to visit and asked Calandra, genuinely curious, "Does Mirelle have a job?" Calandra had smiled and said, "Mirelle takes care of things at home. It suits her." Cousin nodded like that was a complete answer. Mirelle had been standing in the hallway when it happened. She had nodded too, like the description didn't hollow her out. It suits her. Céline wasn't cruel in the obvious way. She didn't shout or make direct attacks in front of people. She was sharper than that. She'd say things like, "Oh, Mirelle made this?" I told her to add less salt, but she never listens, when guests praise the food, making herself the authority and Mirelle the student who couldn't follow direction. Or she'd pick up something Mirelle had made, a sauce, a dessert, a marinade, and bring it to a neighbor's house with no explanation, and the neighbor would thank Céline for it and Céline would accept. She'd done it with the lemon cake last month. Mrs. Okafor had stopped Calandra at the grocery store to say how incredible it was, and Céline had posted it to her social media with the caption, "Made something special for the neighbors." Mirelle had not said a word. Saying something had never changed anything. It only ever made her the difficult one. Mirelle Baptiste did not think of herself as a cruel woman. She thought of herself as a realist. She had raised 2 daughters in the same house with the same opportunities, and they had become very different women. Céline was polished. Céline knew how to move through the world, how to be seen correctly, how to attract the right things. Céline had a shape that rooms responded to. Mirelle did not. Mirelle was heavy in ways Calandra found inconvenient, in body, in feeling, in the way she sometimes looked at Calandra like she was waiting for something. Calandra had stopped trying to understand what she was waiting for. "Useful is enough for someone like you," she had told her once, 2 years ago, after Mirelle had mentioned, quietly, carefully, that she'd been thinking about culinary school. Calandra hadn't said it with heat. That was the thing that stayed with Mirelle longer than the words themselves. She said it the way someone states a fact. Temperature outside. The expiration date on a carton of milk. Mirelle had not mentioned culinary school again. She had one coping system and she had never named it. Before she spoke, she apologized. Not always with the word sorry. Sometimes it was her tone or the way she cleared her throat first or the way she phrased things as questions when they weren't. I was thinking maybe, if it's okay. I don't know if this makes sense, but... She took blame before it was assigned. If something was wrong in the house, she'd already be fixing it. Not because she caused it, but because standing near the problem while it was unfixed felt worse than just solving it and moving on. She avoided confrontation like it was a physical hazard. Not because she was weak. Because she had learned, slowly, completely, that confrontation in this house only led to one outcome, Mirelle losing. Not in the argument. In the aftermath. In the silences that followed. In the way Calandra would look at her for the next 3 days. In the way Selene would find new, subtle ways to make her feel it. So she didn't fight. She absorbed. She moved through rooms like she was trying not to disturb the air. The invitation arrived on a Thursday. It was printed, actually printed on cream cardstock with gold lettering, and it sat on the kitchen table when Mirelle came in to start dinner. Mirelle Baptiste, a birthday celebration. There was a guest list attached. 40 names. People from Calandra's social circle, Selene's friends, colleagues, neighbors who mattered. Mirelle's name was not on the list. She had expected that. What she hadn't expected was the handwritten note in the margin at the bottom, in Calandra's neat script. Menu to be finalized by end of week. Mirelle to coordinate with the caterer and handle all kitchen prep. She is not to mingle. Mirelle read it twice. Then she set it back down on the table, exactly where she found it. She turned on the stove. Started dinner. Her hands didn't shake. That was the thing about being conditioned for long enough. It stopped feeling like pain and started feeling like weather. You didn't fight it. You just dressed for it. But somewhere underneath the routine, underneath the 5:15 alarms and the standing breakfasts and the swallowed words, something had started to shift. She didn't know it yet. But it had. Chapter 3. The decorators arrived at 9 in the morning. Mirelle had already been up for 4 hours. She had prepped the cold appetizers, portioned the canopy bases, marinated the proteins, and had 2 pots running on low heat before the first van pulled into the driveway. She watched them through the kitchen window. 4 people in matching black shirts carrying in crates of rented glassware, folding stands, floral arrangements sealed in protective wrapping. They were being paid for their time. Mirelle was not. By noon, the house looked nothing like itself. The living and dining areas had been opened into one long space. White linens covered every surface. The chandelier had been cleaned. Mirelle had done that 2 days ago, standing on a chair with a cloth and glass spray, while Calandra watched and offered no help. Candles were arranged in clusters of 3 across the sideboards. Flowers, white and blush, imported, expensive, sat in tall vases at calculated intervals. It looked like the inside of a magazine. Mirelle moved through all of it with a clipboard she had made herself, checking timings, adjusting burners, tasting and correcting without being asked. 2 o'clock, Calandra appeared in the kitchen doorway in a robe, hair half set, holding a glass of water. She looked at the stove, the trays, the prep bowls lined in order. She said nothing about any of it. "The catering staff gets here at 4, she said. "Make sure they know where everything is." "I know," Mirelle said. "And Mirelle." Calandra's voice shifted, not louder, just flatter. "Don't show your face tonight. Not with the guests. You come out to serve something, you go back. That's it." Mirelle kept her eyes on the cutting board. "Okay. I mean it. This is Selene's night. I don't want anything pulling focus." Mirelle nodded. Calandra left. Mirelle stood still for exactly 3 seconds. Then she picked up her knife and kept working. Catering staff arrived at 4:30, 2 servers and a plating assistant. They were polite, professional, and completely unprepared for the volume of food already done. The lead server, a woman named Diane, looked over the prep and then looked at Mirelle with an expression caught between impressed and confused. "Did you do all of this?" "Yes. This morning. Last night and this morning." Diane nodded slowly. Okay. We'll take it from here. But they couldn't really. The dishes were Mirelle's, her timings, her temperatures, her sequences. She stayed, guiding without making a show of it, answering questions quietly, adjusting things no one else would have caught. 6. Selene descended the stairs. She was wearing a copper gold dress that caught every light in the room. Her hair was done. Her makeup was exact. She looked like she had stepped out of something curated and intentional. She stood at the bottom of the stairs while Calandra photographed her. You look absolutely stunning, Calandra said, eyes full. Selene laughed softly and said, You don't think the neckline is too much? No. You're perfect. Mirelle was standing 6 feet away with a serving cloth over her arm. Neither of them looked at her. She went back to the kitchen. Guests arrived from 7 onward. Mirelle heard them, the voices, the laughter, the sounds of a party that had nothing to do with her. She stayed at her station, plating, adjusting, handing trays to Diane and the other servers. Through the service window, she could see fragments of the room. Selene moving through the crowd, touching arms, accepting compliments, glowing. Calandra beside a cluster of women, hand to chest, laughing at something with her full social performance turned on. Plate after plate went out. People ate. Voices rose in pleasure. Someone said loudly, The food at these Baptiste events is always incredible. Calandra's response drifted back. We go all out for family. Mirelle wiped down the counter. Then, quietly, without planning it, she took out a small ramekin and began to assemble her father's dessert. His chocolate torte, dense, slightly bitter, balanced with a salted caramel center he had invented by accident one afternoon when she was 10, and he had knocked the salt into the wrong bowl and they had both dissolved into laughter. She assembled it with slow hands. She was not going to serve it. She did not know exactly why she made it. She just needed to. When it was done, she set it on the far corner of the counter, away from the service trays, and claimed. Then she went to the kitchen doorway and stood just inside the shadow of it, watching the party move and shine and fill up every room she had spent all day preparing. She did not go in. She wasn't meant to. Chapter 4. Aziel Varelli had been at the party for 40 minutes and had checked his watch 3 times. He was not rude about it. He spoke when spoken to, held his glass with the relaxed posture of someone used to rooms like this, and kept his expression neutral enough that no one could accuse him of anything. But Livia knew. You promised, she said, appearing at his elbow with a plate of appetizers. 2 hours. You said 2 hours. I said I'd come. And stay. I'm staying. You're calculating your exit. He didn't deny it. Livia pushed the plate toward him. At least eat something. Stop looking like you're waiting for a verdict. He took something from the plate. It was fine. Assembled correctly, nothing wrong with it. But it tasted like food made for the appearance of food, designed to look impressive rather than to actually be good. He moved through the room slowly, picking at things as they passed. Shrimp. Acceptable. Bruschetta. Overdressed. A small rice dish. Underseasoned. He wasn't being difficult. He just had a palate that couldn't be argued with, and none of this was reaching it. He was about to find Livia and tell her he was leaving early when he drifted into the edge of the dining area where the dessert display had been arranged. Towers of petit fours. Macarons in 3 colors. A layered cake with flowers on top that looked like it had been styled more than baked. And then, at the far end of the table, almost out of place, a single small ramekin. No label. No decoration. Not part of the display. He almost walked past it. He didn't. He picked up a clean spoon from the table, took a portion, and put it in his mouth. He stopped walking. The flavor was deep and direct, dark chocolate without sweetness covering it up, a salt hit underneath that didn't fight the bitterness but pulled it forward, a texture that had been built carefully and not rushed. It was honest. It had been made by someone who understood what they were doing and did not try to show off while doing it. He took another spoonful. Then he set the ramekin down and looked around for a server. "Who made this?" he asked Diane, who was passing with a tray. Diane hesitated. The dessert table was. Not the table. This one. He pointed to the ramekin. Diane opened her mouth. Selene was there before she could answer. "I made that one," Selene said, stepping forward with complete confidence and a clean smile. "It's a family recipe." Aziel looked at her. He did not return the smile. "No," he said. The word was quiet, not aggressive, but there was nothing soft in it either. Selene's smile held. "I'm sorry. You didn't make this." The air in the nearby cluster of guests tightened. Calandra, 2 feet away, turned slowly. "I think there may be some confusion," Calandra started. "There isn't." He wasn't looking at either of them now. He was looking toward the far end of the room, toward the hallway that led to the kitchen. "Someone who cooks like this has been doing it for a long time. It's not a copied recipe. It's a practiced hand." He moved his gaze back, scanning the edges of the room, not the center, not where the party was performing itself, the edges. He found her. Mirelle was standing in the kitchen doorway, cloth still over her arm, caught between wanting to step back and not being able to move. "Her," Aziel said. Every head turned. Mirelle felt the attention like a physical weight. Her chest tightened. She looked at the floor, then at the wall, then at no fixed point. Calandra's voice came out measured and brittle. "Mirelle helps in the kitchen." "She's not." "Can you come here?" Aziel said. Not a question. Mirelle walked forward because there was no other option. She stopped several feet away, head slightly down. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I didn't mean for it to be part of, I just made it for, I wasn't trying to." "What are you apologizing for?" She looked up. You made something exceptional and put it on the table. What exactly is the apology for?" Her mouth stayed open, but nothing came out. He looked at her directly, not past her, not through her. At her. "I'd like to speak with you," he said. Privately. Chapter 5. The study was quiet. Mirelle stood near the door, not blocking it, but close enough that leaving would only take 2 steps. She had positioned herself there without thinking about it. Her body had made the decision before her mind caught up. Aziel sat in the chair across the room, relaxed, one ankle crossed over his knee. He didn't seem to notice where she was standing. Or if he did, he didn't react to it. Party sounds were muffled from here. Distant laughter. The music turned low. "You've been cooking all day," he said. It wasn't a question. "That's my job." "It's not your job. You're not on the catering staff." Mirelle said nothing. "You live here?" "Yes. And you cooked everything." She shifted her weight. "Most of it." He nodded once, slowly. "I'm opening a private dining concept. Small, curated, high-end clientele. I've been looking for someone to lead the kitchen for 4 months. I haven't found the right person." Mirelle watched him. "I'd like to offer you the position." She didn't let a single second pass. "No." Aziel didn't blink. "You didn't ask what it pays." "Doesn't matter." "Or what the hours are." "Still no." He studied her. Not in the way people studied her at home, looking for something to correct or criticize. He was watching her the way someone watches a situation they're trying to understand. "Why?" he asked. "Because I don't know you," she said. "And people don't offer things for free." "I'm not offering it for free. I'm offering it in exchange for your work." "That's employment." "That's what it's called at the start," Mirelle said. "Then it becomes something else." "What does it become?" She looked at the window instead of him. "Obligation. Then debt. Then you're stuck because someone did something for you and now they have a reason to tell you what to do." The room was quiet for a moment. Has that happened to you before? He asked. I'm not doing a therapy session with someone I just met. That's fair. He uncrossed his leg and leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands loose. I'm going to say one more thing and then I'll let it go. She waited. That dessert you made took skill that doesn't come from a hobby. Someone taught you seriously or you taught yourself seriously, and either way you've been doing it long enough that it's part of how you think. That's not a small thing. And whatever is happening in this house, he paused, it doesn't look like a place that's telling you that. Mirelle felt something tighten in her throat. She pushed it down. I appreciate the compliment, she said, voice flat. I'm not interested in the offer. Okay. She waited for him to push. To add something. To find another angle. He didn't. He just sat back, gave a short nod, and said, Then thank you for the food. It was the best thing I've eaten in months. Mirelle stood there for a moment longer than she meant to. She had braced for an argument and there wasn't one, and the absence of it threw her off in a way she couldn't immediately correct. Good night, she said. Good night. She walked out. In the hallway, the party was still going. Selene was laughing with a group of women near the fireplace. Calandra was watching the room with satisfaction, the way she always looked when everything was performing correctly. Nobody looked at Mirelle as she passed. She went to the kitchen, untied her apron, and stood at the sink with the water running cold over her hands for no reason at all. She kept thinking about the way he'd said, okay. Not defeated. Not irritated. Just okay. Like her refusal was a valid answer and he had no argument with it. Nobody in her life responded to her like that. She turned the tap off. In the study, Aziel hadn't moved. Livia appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, reading his face the way only a younger sister could. What happened? Nothing, he said. You have that look. What look? The one where something got your attention and you're pretending it didn't. He was quiet for a moment. She refused before I finished the sentence, he said. Didn't ask about the salary. Didn't ask about the role. Just no. So she wasn't being difficult. She was being careful. He paused. There's a difference. Livia leaned against the doorframe and said nothing. Aziel picked up his glass. Find her name, he said. Chapter 6. Livia Varelli found Mirelle on a Wednesday. Not through Calandra. Not through Selene. She got the number from Diane, the lead server, who had apparently been impressed enough by Mirelle's efficiency to keep her contact. The text was direct. Hi, this is Livia, Aziel's sister. I need a cook, not a caterer. Are you available on Saturdays? Mirelle stared at it for a long time. Then she typed, I'm not interested in working for your brother. Livia replied in under a minute. Good. This is for me. He won't even be there. He wasn't. The first Saturday, Aziel was traveling. Mirelle arrived at the address Livia sent, a modern apartment on the 14th floor, and cooked a late lunch for Livia and two of her friends while Livia talked too much and laughed too easily and made Mirelle feel, unexpectedly, like a person in a room instead of a function in one. You're very quiet, Livia said, watching Mirelle plate the food. I'm working. You can work and talk. I know. I just don't feel like it. Livia grinned. Honest. I like that. Mirelle didn't respond, but something in her shoulders dropped slightly. She came back the following Saturday, and the one after that. Aziel started appearing on the third week. He didn't announce it. He just came home while she was cooking, moved through the kitchen to get water, and said, You changed the spice ratio on the rice. Mirelle didn't look up. It needed it. It's better. She said nothing. He took his water and left. It happened again the week after. He passed through, observed something, made a single comment. Nothing intrusive. Nothing that required a full response. But he was always watching in a way that felt different from how other people watched her. Other people looked at her to find what was wrong. He looked at her to understand what was happening. It unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. One afternoon she was reducing a sauce and it was taking longer than it should, and she turned the heat up and started stirring faster, leaning over the pot, moving with the tight efficiency of someone trying to make up time. His hand closed around her wrist. Not hard. Just firm. "Stop," he said. She went still. "If you rush it now, the texture separates. You'll lose the whole thing." She was very aware of his hand, of how close he was standing. "I know that," she said. "Then slow down. I had it. You were about to ruin it." She turned to look at him, and he was closer than she expected. Close enough that she registered everything: his height, his stillness, the way he wasn't moving back. She pulled her wrist away. "Don't touch me without asking," she said. "You're right. I'm sorry." He said it immediately and without flinching, and stepped back a full pace. She turned back to the stove and turned the heat down and said nothing else. But her hand was unsteady for the next 10 minutes, and she was furious at herself for it. Conversations between them were never long, but they accumulated. He asked her once why she never plated food the same way twice. She said, "Because the food is never exactly the same twice." He looked at her for a moment too long and then said, "Most people don't think about it that way. Most people don't think about food at all. They just eat it." Another time he came in while she was tasting something and she caught him watching and said, "What?" "Nothing," he said. "You taste things differently than other cooks. How do you know how other cooks taste things?" "I've run 3 restaurants." She hadn't known that. She didn't ask more, but she thought about it later. One evening, Livia had gone out for an hour and left them in the apartment together without warning. Mirelle had her back to the kitchen entrance and was focused on finishing the last dish when she realized he had been standing at the counter in silence for several minutes. She turned. He looked up from the book he wasn't really reading. Their eyes held for a beat longer than accidental. Mirelle turned back to the stove. "She does this on purpose," Mirelle said flatly. "Yes," Aziel said. "It's not going to work." A pause. "I know," he said. But neither of them moved. The room was very quiet, and the space between them, though several feet wide, felt like it had gotten smaller without anyone taking a step. Livia came back 20 minutes later with takeout dessert, smiling too wide. Mirelle packed up her things and left without a word. But she was already thinking about next Saturday. And she hated that. Chapter 7. Mirelle started coming home at 8, then 9, then sometimes past 10, smelling like garlic and butter and a kitchen that wasn't theirs, and she would go straight to her room without stopping in the living room to check if anyone needed anything. That was the first thing Calandra noticed. Checking had stopped. For years, Mirelle had moved through the house on a kind of automatic rotation, cooking, cleaning, appearing at the right moments, disappearing at others. She had functioned like something the house needed to keep running. And now she was coming home late and going to her room and closing her door, and the house still ran because it had to, but Calandra felt the shift and did not like it. "Where are you going on Saturdays?" she asked one evening, not looking up from her phone. "Cooking work," Mirelle said. "For who?" "A client." Calandra looked up then. "What client?" "You don't have clients." "I do now." The silence that followed was not comfortable. "I don't know why you think running around for strangers is something to be proud of," Calandra said. "You have responsibilities here. The house is clean. The fridge is stocked. I don't know what responsibility I'm missing." Calandra stared at her. Mirelle held eye contact for exactly 2 seconds longer than she normally would have. Then she went to the kitchen and started on dinner. Her hands were steady. Selene escalated within the week. She started making comments at dinner, small ones timed to land when Calandra was already listening. "Mirelle came in so late last night. I couldn't sleep. She was on the phone in her room, laughing. I don't even know who she talks to. Then, one afternoon, she followed Mirelle into the kitchen and closed the door behind her. Who are you sleeping with? Mirelle turned from the counter. What? You heard me. You're out all hours, you're suddenly in a good mood for no reason, you're acting like this house doesn't exist anymore. Who is he? I'm working, Selene. Nobody works that much and comes home smiling. I wasn't smiling. You were. When you thought nobody was looking. Selene crossed her arms. Is it someone from that party? Because if you're embarrassing this family by chasing after someone who is a guest in our home, I'm not chasing anyone. Then why are you acting different? Mirelle looked at her sister. Really looked at her. And what she saw wasn't anger, it was anxiety. Something had shifted in the balance of the house and Selene could feel it, and it was making her mean in a new, sharper way. I'm working, Mirelle said again. That's all. Selene stepped closer. You think someone out there actually wants you? You think this is going to go somewhere? You're going to come back here embarrassed and the rest of us are going to have to deal with it. Mirelle turned back to the counter. Get out of my kitchen, she said quietly. Selene blinked. Mirelle had never said that before. Not once. Selene left. Aziel made the second offer on a Tuesday. He came into the kitchen while Livia was in the shower and stood at the counter and said, without preamble, I want you to run the kitchen. Full creative control. Your menu, your hours, your name on the concept. Mirelle kept chopping. I heard you the first time, she said. This is different from the first time. How? Because I'm not just offering you a job. I'm offering you a future. Something that belongs to you. She set the knife down and turned. Why do you keep doing this? Because you're wasting in the situation and I think you know it. That's not your problem to solve. I'm not trying to solve your problem. I'm trying to give you a resource. It's the same thing, she said. You give me something and then I'm connected to you. And then if it goes wrong, if we go wrong. She stopped. His expression shifted. She had said more than she meant to. Mirelle? No. Her voice was firm. I'm not doing this. I can't owe you anything. I can't need you. Do you understand that? I cannot be in a position where you have something over me. I wouldn't. You don't know that. And neither do I. The room went quiet. He looked at her with something that wasn't frustration and wasn't hurt but sat somewhere between both. Okay, he said finally. But this time the word didn't settle the way it had before. He walked out. Mirelle stood at the counter and did not move for a long time. She had refused him. And it had cost her something she didn't have a name for yet. Chapter 8. It happened on a Thursday night. Mirelle had come home at a normal hour, 7:30, nothing unusual. She had stopped at the grocery store and picked up things for dinner because that was still what she did, still what she carried, even as everything else in her had started moving in a different direction. She was unpacking the bags when Calandra walked in. I got a call today, Calandra said. Mirelle kept unpacking. From Denise Okafor. She said she saw you at the farmer's market on Saturday. Selling food. I was catering a private event nearby. I had leftover portions. You were selling food at a public market, Mirelle. Like a street vendor. Calandra's voice was controlled, but the disgust underneath it was clear. Do you understand how that looks? The people know this family. I sold 12 units in 40 minutes. I don't care. I made $300 in 40 minutes, Mama. I said I don't care. Calandra moved further into the kitchen. You are not going to go out there and make a spectacle of yourself and drag this family's name through it. You want to cook, you cook here. For us. That's what you're good for. Mirelle set a can of tomatoes on the counter. She stood with her back to Calandra. Say something, Calandra said. Don't just stand there. Mirelle turned around. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me you understand. Mirelle looked at her mother. At the expectation on her face. At the complete certainty that Mirelle would fold, apologize, agree, shrink back into the shape this house required. I understand, Mirelle said. Calandra nodded, satisfied, and left the kitchen. Mirelle stood there. She thought about what she had just said. Then she thought about why she said it. Not because she believed it. Not because Calandra was right. But because saying the opposite felt dangerous, and she had spent so many years protecting herself from what disagreement cost in this house that agreement had become automatic. She wasn't staying because she had to. She was staying because she was afraid. That was the first time she had said it to herself that clearly. She packed on Friday morning while Calandra was at her book club and Selene was asleep. She didn't pack dramatically. She took 2 bags, clothes, documents, the small wooden recipe box her father had made her when she was 14. She moved quietly through her room, made decisions quickly, and left before noon. No note. No confrontation. Just gone. First 2 months were hard in a plain, practical way. She rented a room from a woman named Mrs. Faree who asked no questions and kept the heat on. She took every catering job she could find through Diane's network. Corporate lunches, small birthday events, a weekly meal prep for a family of 5. She was tired constantly. She second-guessed herself constantly. But she was building something with her own hands in her own name, and nobody was taking credit at the end of the night. The shift came quietly. A client referred her to another client. That client told 3 people. One of those people ran a food blog and posted about her jerk chicken with tamarind glaze, and the post got passed around and her phone rang 6 times the next morning. She answered every call. She started putting her name on everything. Food by Mirelle Baptiste. Not hidden. Not apologized for. When a client tried to underpay her and said, I thought you'd be more flexible given your situation, she said, my situation is that my rate is my rate, and held the line until they agreed. She was still learning how to do that. But she was doing it. People began to recognize her work before they recognized her face. And then both. Her name moved through the city the way good things do, person to person without force. Mirelle Baptiste. Said out loud. Said with meaning. And somewhere across the city, in an apartment on the 14th floor, a phone lit up with a news alert about an emerging private chef making waves in the city's culinary scene. Aziel read the name, set his phone down, and smiled at the ceiling. Chapter 9. Calandra called on a Sunday. Mirelle saw the name on the screen and let it ring out. Then it rang again. Then a text came through, we need to talk. It's important. She didn't respond that day. The following Thursday, they showed up at her kitchen space, a small commercial unit she was renting by the hour while she saved for something permanent. She had given no one in that family her address. Livia later would admit with genuine guilt that she had mentioned the general area once without thinking. Calandra walked in wearing a soft expression Mirelle had never seen on her before. Selene stood slightly behind her, quieter than usual, eyes moving around the space with something that was not quite admiration but was close to it. This is wonderful, Calandra said, looking at the kitchen. You've really done something here. Mirelle was wiping down a counter. She didn't stop. What do you need? She asked. Calandra's soft expression flickered. She was not used to being received that way by Mirelle. We haven't spoken in months. I was worried. You weren't worried. You're here because something changed and you want to know what it means for you. That's not fair. Which part is wrong? Calandra opened her mouth and closed it. Selene stepped forward. Her voice was quieter than Mirelle had ever heard it. I saw the article. And the blog post. People are talking about you. I know. I didn't think, Selene stopped. Started again. I didn't know you were going to do all this. You didn't think I could. Selene didn't deny it. That at least was honest. We want to reconnect, Calandra said, recovering herself. Family should support each other. Whatever happened before, we can move past it. I'd love to have you back at Sunday dinners. And if there's any way we could work together, even just for events. No. Calandra blinked. No to Sunday dinners. No to working together. And no to reconnecting. Mirelle set the cloth down and faced them fully. Her voice was even. Her hands were still. I'm not angry at you. I want you to understand that. I'm not standing here with a list of grievances I need you to answer for. But I'm also not going to let you back in. Mirelle, I'm your mother. I know who you are. And I know what it felt like to grow up in that house. You told me I was useful. That it was enough for someone like me. She paused. I believed that for a long time. I don't anymore. And I can't be around people who need me to believe it to feel comfortable. Calandra's jaw tightened. The soft expression was fully gone now. Selene was looking at the floor. You don't get access to who I've become because you couldn't handle who I was, Mirelle said. That's all. She picked up her cloth. I have work to finish. I'll need you both to go. Neither of them argued. They left. Mirelle stood in the middle of her kitchen and breathed. Just breathed. No shaking. No wave of guilt chasing after the relief. Just quiet and the hum of the refrigerator and the smell of her own space. Aziel came 2 weeks later. He didn't call first. He knocked on the kitchen door at 11 in the morning on a Tuesday, and when she opened it, he was standing there in a plain jacket, no pretense, holding nothing. I'm not here about work, he said immediately. She leaned against the doorframe. Okay. I've been trying to figure out the right time for months. There isn't one, so I'm just here. She waited. I love you, he said. I'm not saying that to move you or to get something. I'm saying it because it's been true for a while and I'm tired of not saying it. Mirelle looked at him. You kept your distance, she said. While everything was happening. You didn't reach out. I know. Why? Because you needed to do it without me. And I needed to know I could wait without it being about control. He held her gaze. It wasn't easy. She was quiet for a moment. What do you actually want from me, Aziel? Past the feeling. What does this look like to you? It looks like two people who are honest with each other. Who don't disappear on each other. Who build things separately and together. He paused. I don't want to manage you. I don't want to be the reason you second-guess yourself. I just want to be in your life. I won't shrink for anyone again, she said. Not even for someone I have feelings for. Something shifted in his expression. You have feelings for me. I just said not even for someone I have feelings for. Don't make it strange. Corner of his mouth moved. She straightened up from the doorframe. I need you to understand something, she said. I choose everything now. Where I go. What I build. Who I let in. That doesn't stop because you're here. I know. And if you ever make me feel like I owe you. You walk, he said simply. And I deserve it. She studied him. All of him. The stillness, the honesty, the way he had never once tried to make himself easier to refuse. She stepped back from the door. Come in, she said. He did. That evening, Mirelle stood alone in her kitchen after he had gone, the space fully hers, every shelf organized by her hand, every pan chosen by her, her name on the door in plain black letters. She stood in the center of it. Not waiting for permission. Not preparing to apologize. Not making herself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. Just standing. Fully upright. Fully there. If Mirelle's story moved you, if you've ever been the one doing everything while someone else took the credit, Hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And tell me this in the comments. Was there ever a moment in your life when you realized you were staying somewhere out of fear, not because you actually wanted to be there? What did you do? Drop it below, I read every single one.